Hi, welcome back to EducateTube.com. My name is aps-c, your host. Today we'll be talking about, does camera resolution matters? Well, it depends. Let me give you my take on it, and you can write a comment below. I'm going to be comparing the Samsung Note 3 camera to the Sony a6500 to the Sony a7rii. Now, the Samsung Note 3 can take 13 megapixel, and the Sony a6500 is 24 megapixel, and the Sony a7rii 42 megapixel. The megapixel itself is irrelevant if you don't have the proper lens, right? So it's if you want to compare resolution, you got to make sure you have the best lens on the camera. So I'm going to assume that Samsung Note 3 and even the iPhone 6 and 7, because we're talking about smartphones, have the best lens fixed onto the smartphone. So let's assume that for now. And the 13 megapixel will then be comparable to the 24 and 42. And what I'm going to assume also that the Sony a6500 aps-c sensor will have one of the best lens on it. Like for example, the Zeiss 55mm f1.8 or the Sony a7rii. Let's say we put the lens there as well. Also Zeiss 55mm f1.8. Giving you 42 megapixel. Let's say it can resolve 42 megapixel, because otherwise if you talk about megapixel and you don't have a good lens, well, you can't really compare because it's already foggy. The lens is not highest resolution. It's not a great thing to do comparison if you don't have a good lens to compare with. So I'm going to assume that these two contain Zeiss 55 f1.8 and Samsung or iPhone 7 or 6, whatever, contains the best lens. Now, of course, the sensor is also important. Nothing you can do with the sensor. The Samsung Note 3 has 1/2.3 inch sensor. The iPhone has 1 1/3 inch sensor, and Sony 6500 contains the aps-c sensor, and while the Sony a7 series contained a full frame sensor, 35mm sensor. So then when you do comparison between 42, 24, and 13 megapixel, it makes more sense, because now you get the best sensor, the best lens, and now we can say, okay, is this the best option? Because I see a lot of YouTube that they say, oh, the iPhone is the best, camera, even better than some of these aps-c sensor camera. I'm like, did you put the best lens on those camera before you compare? Even the expert, I see some of this video, it's pretty crazy. They would say, oh, the iPhone or the Samsung is better, and then they put on the worst type of lens on the camera. Obviously, it's like me comparing my vision, and I put on a glass that has filled with scratches. Obviously, it's not going to be comparable. Okay, so keep that in mind. So having the best lens, and then the sensors, and then of course we then can compare the resolution. Okay, now back to my question: does the camera resolve well, right? Or does it matter if you have the resolution that's high, like for example 42 versus 24 versus 13? Well, my take is this, and I'm going to show you a sample photos, and you can tell me what you think about it. Okay, so for my opinion is that if you're taking the Samsung Note 3 or Note 4 or the iPhone 6 or 7 or even the HTC and the LG type of camera smartphone, if you take a picture, it is great if you're just printing at 4x6. Okay, so if it's a 4x6 photo card like this one here, doesn't matter. Okay, your smartphone is definitely adequate. Right? So if you're going to just print it this size of a photo and you're giving it out to yourself, to your family, or anyone for that matter, okay, then this 13 megapixel Samsung Note 3 or the iPhone or the LG or HTC smartphone is more than adequate. This is fine. Now, it becomes a problem when you try to print the size of a paper, like for example 11.5 by 8. Okay, this is a landscape, so this is a portrait, but this is landscape here. So 11.5 by 8, or is it 8.5 by 11? Sorry, it's 8.5 by 11 inch paper. Then Samsung Note 3 or the iPhone 7 or 6 or the LG or the HTC smartphone or even the Sony smartphone, well then you might be able to tell that is not the best quality, right? So you're starting to print anything larger than this, right, or this size or larger, I would say go with the aps-c camera, or even the micro four thirds is fine. Okay, but micro four thirds, aps-c, printing this size, or maybe twice or three times this size, it's great. It's fine. It's perfect. Okay, and this would be like, for example, if you're doing you're a wedding photographer, and your clients want this size or three times this size, I would say the aps-c sensor, or even the micro four thirds camera, should be adequate. However, if you're going to print the size of this whole entire board that I have here, or bigger, then I would actually go with Sony a7rii with a nice lens, of course, on it. Enlarge it to the size of this whole board. 42 megapixel would be ideal, okay, or 36 megapixel. So as long as you're you're gonna print only this size, go for the smartphone. It's fine, okay. And then most people actually only give out this type of size to their relative, friends, and family anyway, right? So your smartphone is adequate. That's fine. When you start to print this size, or three times the size of this, then go for the aps-c camera, like the Sony a6500, right, or Nikon aps-c camera, or the Canon aps-c camera, even the Panasonic G4, G5, right, the micro four thirds, or Olympus micro four thirds, or Fujitsu, what the heck is that name? Fuji, yeah, Fuji. Sorry, Fuji camera, micro four thirds, or aps-c camera. All right, that's fine. But if you start to get a picture that is like the size of this board, this entire board here, then 36 megapixel, 42 megapixel is definitely the way to go. All right. So that's my take. Let's have a look at the photo, and I'll illustrate to you where this matters. Okay. Okay. So here's a comparison of a photo of a watch that I took with Samsung Note 3 on the left, a6500 in the middle, and a7rii on the right. I zoom in the Samsung Note 3, and you can see the picture of the watch. The resolving power is not that great, because remember, it started out as a wide angle lens, so you have to zoom it in, and when you zoom in, the resolution on it is quite poor. Even the color is not as great. Now again, that's dependent on how you adjust the software on the Samsung Note 3. Okay, so let's not worry about this color for now. Let's look at the resolution and the sharpness. As you can see, Samsung Note 3, and I would say apply that to the iPhone 6 and maybe even the 7, LG, or the HTC. These wide angle 13 megapixel cameras on these smartphones, they can resolve, but once you start to zoom in, you can see that the detail is lost. Compared to, for example, the Sony a6500, the sharpness on the Sony a6500 and the a7rii is so detailed and sharp, and there is no pixelation. Right? And the color is nice too, but again, we're not going to deal with color because it just depends on your setting. So just looking at the sharpness, you can see that the Sony a6500 definitely outperformed the Samsung Note 3, and I would say that about the iPhone 6 and 7 as well. So there's no way you can compare a smartphone to a true aps-c or the full frame camera with a good lens on it, right? You can tell that definitely this is a high grade type of photo. In fact, the a7rii, when you look at the photo carefully, I zoom in 50%, and you can see the resolving power and the detail is still there. You can check my other video previously that I made between Sony a6500 and a7rii, and having the same type of lens. You can see that the resolving power of the a7rii, because it's a full frame, when you zoom in 50%, right, you can tell that it still kept its detailed picture or sharpness. All right, so there we go. There's your comparison. So if you want to print 4x6, the smartphone is adequate. If you want to print anything between 8.5 by 11 to maybe even you know, 3 times that size, and aps-c camera 24 megapixel like the Sony a6500 is good, it's great. But if you're going anything above like a wall size type of picture, then go for Sony a7rii with a 42 megapixel, or even the Nikon D800 or D810 that can do 36 megapixel. That's fine as well. Okay, again, it depends on your application. Most people will probably settle with the smartphone because they only print a 4x6 photo anyway. Thanks for watching. EducateTube.com.